The Battle of Monmouth, fought on June 28, 1778, is one of the most significant yet often overlooked engagements of the American Revolution. This battle was not just a military clash between the Continental Army and the British forces, but a defining moment in the evolution of the American Army, marking a transition from a struggling militia to a more disciplined and capable fighting force. The battle also showcased the leadership of General George Washington, the resilience of his troops, and the growing confidence of the fledgling American forces. The context: a changing tide in the Revolution. By the summer of 1778, the American Revolution had entered a new phase. The Continental Army under General George Washington had suffered numerous defeats and setbacks in the early years of the war, but it had also shown resilience, especially following Washington's dramatic victories at Trenton and Princeton. The winter of 1777 to 1778 at Valley Forge had been a crucial turning point, during which Washington's army endured incredible hardships but emerged as a more cohesive, disciplined force, thanks to the training and discipline instilled by foreign officers like Baron von Steuben. Meanwhile, the British had been forced to retreat from Philadelphia, as the French had officially entered the war on the side of the Americans, making it increasingly difficult for Britain to maintain control of the colonies. The British, under General Sir Henry Clinton, decided to leave Philadelphia and march toward New York City in an effort to consolidate British strength and avoid further conflict with the newly allied French. Washington, sensing an opportunity, decided to confront the British as they moved out of Philadelphia. He gathered his forces, which now included a more seasoned and organized army, and moved to intercept them. The British retreat and the American response. After the British departed Philadelphia on June 18, 1778, they began their march toward New York City. The route they chose led them through New Jersey, and it was along this path that the American forces, under Washington's command, decided to make their move. Washington's army, numbering around 10,000 soldiers, shadowed the British, with the goal of either forcing a battle or harassing their retreat. Washington was aware that his army was not yet ready to engage the British in a large-scale battle, but he knew that the opportunity for a decisive confrontation was approaching. The British forces, under General Clinton, were vulnerable during their retreat, and Washington's strategy was to strike when they were at their most vulnerable. The stage was set for what would become the Battle of Monmouth. The battle begins, early stages and the American advance. On June 28, 1778, Washington's army engaged the British at Monmouth, located near Freehold, New Jersey. The battle began as the Continental Army made contact with the rear guard of the British forces, commanded by General Charles Cornwallis. Washington's forces launched a series of attacks, hoping to delay the British march and inflict casualties. The battle unfolded in the heat of a scorching summer day, and the conditions were grueling for both sides. Temperatures soared, and the soldiers endured both the physical strain of battle and the oppressive heat. The Continental Army, under Washington's leadership, launched an initial assault that caught the British off guard. However, the British quickly regrouped, and the fighting became a stalemate. The key moment: the American stand at Monmouth. One of the most critical moments of the battle occurred when Washington ordered his forces to make a stand and hold their ground. The British, realizing that their retreat was being delayed, turned their attention to breaking through the American lines. The fighting at Monmouth was fierce, with both sides exchanging heavy fire, but the Continental Army stood firm. One of the most notable aspects of the battle was the role of General Charles Lee, one of Washington's subordinates. Lee was initially in charge of a portion of the American forces, but he hesitated to engage the British and, at one point, ordered a retreat. This decision was highly controversial and led to confusion among the American troops. However, Washington quickly took control of the situation, personally rallying his troops and leading them back into the fray. Washington's bold leadership in the face of Lee's reluctance was instrumental in turning the tide of the battle. The aftermath: a tactical draw but a strategic victory. While the Battle of Monmouth did not result in a decisive victory for either side, it had important implications for the American cause. The British, although able to continue their retreat to New York, suffered significant casualties, about 250 dead, wounded, or missing, while the Americans lost around 100 men. The engagement showed that the Continental Army was now capable of standing its ground against the British in a conventional battle, something that had not been possible earlier in the war. The aftermath of the battle saw Washington's reputation as a leader grow even further. His quick response to Lee's hesitation and his ability to rally his troops in the heat of battle earned him the respect of his soldiers and reinforced his position as the unquestioned leader of the Continental Army. Washington had shown that he could lead his army effectively, even in the face of challenges, and that the American forces were capable of fighting toe-to-toe with the British. The impact of the battle on the American Army. The Battle of Monmouth was also significant in terms of the Continental Army's development. While the battle itself may have been tactically inconclusive, it demonstrated the progress the American Army had made since the early days of the war. The soldiers, many of whom had trained at Valley Forge, were now better equipped, better disciplined, and more confident in their abilities. Moreover, the battle revealed the growing professionalism of the Continental Army. Despite the heat, fatigue, and confusion, the troops held their ground and continued to fight. The experience at Monmouth proved to both the Americans and the British that the Continental Army was no longer a ragtag collection of militia but a formidable fighting force capable of sustained combat. The legacy of the Battle of Monmouth. In many ways, the Battle of Monmouth served as a turning point in the American Revolution. While it did not result in a decisive victory for either side, it represented a significant shift in the balance of power. The British were forced to retreat, and the Americans demonstrated that they could stand up to the British in battle. The battle also marked the end of the British attempt to win a quick and decisive victory in the northern colonies. The battle had a lasting impact on the morale of the Continental Army. Washington's leadership during the engagement solidified his status as a capable and inspiring leader, and the performance of his soldiers gave them newfound confidence in their abilities. In the broader context of the war, the Battle of Monmouth signified that the American cause was gaining strength and that the British would no longer have an easy time subduing the rebellion.